Your baby won't eat.
No.
You've tried everything, and you're starting to wonder if you're doing something terribly wrong. I've been there, and what I wish someone had told me then is what I'm going to tell you now. You are not failing. 3 weeks into motherhood, I sat in my pediatrician's office, trying not to cry. My daughter had barely eaten in 2 days. She'd turn her head away from the bottle, arch her back, and scream. I was convinced I was doing something terribly wrong. I Googled "baby won't eat" at 2 a.m. and found thousands of other panicked parents asking the same questions. The advice was everywhere and completely contradictory. Here's what nobody tells you about feeding babies. It rarely goes smoothly. One day they eat perfectly, the next they refuse everything. Feed on a schedule, feed on demand. Never snack. Always respond to hunger cues. It was exhausting. And none of it was actually helping. The first thing that actually helped? Stopping watching the clock. The rigid feeding schedule was making everything worse. Research shows that healthy babies are excellent at self-regulating their intake. They eat when hungry and stop when full. Fighting against their natural rhythms creates feeding battles, not fixes them. The second thing that changed everything: learning actual hunger cues. Not every cry means hunger. Real early hunger cues include rooting, turning the head toward when touching the cheek, hands moving to mouth, smacking or licking lips, and opening and closing the mouth. Crying is actually a late hunger sign. By the time a baby is crying, they're already frustrated, which makes feeding harder, not easier. When I said my baby won't eat, what I actually meant was, she's not eating the amount I think she should eat when I think she should eat it. Babies' appetites vary dramatically day to day. Growth spurts, developmental leaps, teething, illness, all of these affect appetite. A baby eating less for a day or two is usually completely normal. Instead of obsessing over how much they ate, watch these signs instead. Wet diapers, at least 5 to 6 per day after the first week. Weight gain over time, not day to day. Energy level and alertness. General contentment between feedings. If your baby has plenty of wet diapers, is gaining weight appropriately, and seems generally happy, they are eating enough, even if it doesn't match the chart. I felt like a failure when breastfeeding didn't work. Every article said, breast is best. And there I was, mixing formula at 3 a.m. Here's what I learned. Fed is what matters. Research shows that while breastfeeding has benefits, the difference in long-term outcomes is much smaller than parenting books make it seem. Formula-fed babies grow up healthy. If formula works better for your family, that is a completely valid choice. My daughter went through a phase where she'd smear food everywhere, drop it deliberately, and seem more interested in playing than eating. But research shows that messy eating is actually crucial for learning. Babies learn about textures, consistency, and properties of food by touching, squishing, and yes, throwing it. The mess means their brain is developing. What helped? A mat under the high chair, clothes I didn't care about, and letting her explore. Within weeks, more food was making it to her mouth because she'd figured out how food worked. Introducing solids based on readiness, not age alone, was another shift that helped. Current guidelines say introducing solids anywhere between 4 and 6 months is appropriate if the baby shows readiness signs. Starting solids isn't a race, but it's also not a rigid deadline. Now, when should you actually worry? Call your pediatrician if your baby consistently refuses to eat for more than 12 to 24 hours. Fewer than 5 or 6 wet diapers per day after the first week. No weight gain or weight loss over several weeks. Baby seems lethargic or unresponsive. Persistent vomiting, not just normal spit up, or signs of dehydration, dry mouth, no tears when crying, sunken soft spot. Trust your instinct. If something feels wrong, always call the doctor. Here's what would have saved me so much stress. Feeding isn't a test you can fail. There's no perfect schedule, perfect amount, or perfect method. There's only what works for your baby and your family. Babies are resilient. Missing a feeding window by an hour, switching formula brands, or starting solids at 5.5 months instead of 6 months will not harm your baby. Flexibility matters more than following rules. Other parents aren't being honest. When someone says, My baby eats perfectly every 3 hours, they're either forgetting the rough days or you're catching them during a good week. Every single baby has feeding struggles. When my daughter was 3 weeks old and refusing to eat, I thought I was failing at the most basic task of motherhood. Now, I know that feeding challenges are incredibly common, usually temporary, and rarely mean anything is seriously wrong. Watch your baby, not the clock. Trust their cues, not the chart. The feeding struggles that feel overwhelming right now, they will pass. As long as your baby is growing, developing, and generally content, you are doing just fine. You are not failing. You are figuring it out, and that's exactly what good parents do. For comprehensive guidance on feeding from birth to 3 years, including what to expect at each stage, how to handle common challenges, and when to call the doctor, check out my step-by-step guide for first-time parents. Chapter 2 covers everything we talked about today and more. Link is in the description below. Subscribe for more honest, research-backed parenting guidance every week. And if this helped you feel even a little less alone, please share it with a new parent who needs to hear it right now. Disclaimer: this video provides general parenting and educational information about infant feeding. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Every baby is different. Always consult your pediatrician with concerns about your baby's feeding, growth, or health.